the meeting started promptly at 5:30. I have to read the order pursuant to Governor Baker's July 16th, 2022 signing of an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, including the extension of his March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20, till March 31st, 2023. This meeting of the Chatham Select Board is being conducted via in-person and remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 1-508-945-4410, conference ID 203-386-491#, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this is a live broadcast and simulcast on Channel 18, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will certainly post a record of this meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Our first order of business is to conduct a roll call here this evening. I'll go around the horn here. Mr. Metters?
Present.
Mr. Shell?
Present.
Ms. Davis?
Present.
Mr. Nicastro?
Present.
And the chair is present as well. Next item of business is to approve and adopt the minutes of October 11th, 2022. A motion to approve, please.
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. And a
Second.
Thank you. Mr. Shell has pre-edited, but we have other edits, Mr. Shell?
I do.
Was it good, careful reading?
These are substantive, well, relatively substantive anyway. They're all on page 9 in the second line at the top of the page, where it says being requested. My understanding was they're contemplated but not yet requested in any official way, so I would substitute for requested, contemplated for reimbursement from the Waterways User Fund, user fee.
Is that the first paragraph, Mike?
Yeah, second line on the page.
Second line? Okay.
Over on the left, requested,
Yep.
strike that, insert contemplated for reimbursement. Last line of the second paragraph, I may be wrong. I wasn't aware there was ever a structure there before, so the word rebuilt, I would change to built.
Oh,
There absolutely
was a structure.
It
there.
was. Well,
infamous
I'm learning.
structure, I might add.
Infamous trap dock
Infamous.
building.
Maybe that was before my time. Thank you. I'll withdraw that suggestion. Lastly, in the fourth paragraph, Dr. Duncanson said outreach. That paragraph, fourth line, not aware of any concerns from the consulting committees about, the focus was funding the project from the WOOF.
Yeah.
So I would add funding before the project and from the WOOF after the word project.
Okay, thank you, sir. Mr. Nicastro, you had your hand up?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. Three small ones. On page 3, under item 1, the fourth paragraph, Rebecca Segura. After the phrase Chatham Cookware and, it should say as a representative of Monomoy Community Services. Then on page 6, in the middle paragraph that begins, it was noted, in the last line, before the word manager, we should have inserted LLC.
Right.
And then finally on page, I forgot page 4, there's.
Gene, you wanted to read that an LLC manager be included in the bylaw.
Yeah, an LLC manager. And page 4, I left this off. Up at the very top, that sentence that leads over from the prior page. After that, I'd like to add this sentence, Betty Magnuson also spoke. Betty Magnuson also spoke.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for the careful readings. I thought that submitting, kind of typos or word replacements is probably a good idea ahead of time. That's efficient.
Yeah.
Sean is on remote tonight, but she's taking minutes tonight as well. So I think that's a very efficient way to go about it. We have substantive changes, and I think obviously you bring them here and we vote on them, okay? So it's been moved, seconded, edited. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
And Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Thank you very much, folks. Okay. Next item of business, public announcements and/or agenda item requests. Public announcements this evening, either from the public that are physically present and/or elsewhere. I see Judith Giorgio online. Hi, Judith. Recognize
Hi,
you.
thank you, Chairman Dykens.
Yep.
I just wanted to let the watching public, and you all know that we have added a second flu COVID booster vaccine clinic. It's going to be Wednesday, October 26th from 2 to 5 p.m. It's going to be a drive-through clinic at the Chatham DPW building, and it's an online registration for this clinic, and I have posted the link on the Health Division page of the town website. So if anybody is interested, I'm urging them to go and boosters and
Get
flu
a shot.
vaccine. The only issue is there will not be any high-dose vaccine at this clinic. So if you have any questions, I can answer them.
Questions for Judith? Any comments or anything? Oh, thank you, Judith. That was the 26th, 2 to 5, DPW flu clinic.
Excellent, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other public announcements anywhere? Okay, agenda item requests. I see Mr. Nacastro's hands up. Mr. Nacastro.
Mr. Chairman, this is more or less an announcement. I had promised a citizen that I was going to request contemporaneous public comment on item 6B, the COA, but my understanding is that that's being withdrawn for tonight. So.
Yeah, actually, I'm glad you brought that up. That has been withdrawn for this evening. I think we'll have it on a future agenda item, as a future agenda item. But thank you, Mr. Nacastro. Mr. Shell, anybody? Okay. Anybody else for a future agenda item requests? I see a hand up. It looks like Elaine Gibbs online. Elaine.
Yes, it's not a request. I was just wondering if you would permit public comment during the short-term rental discussion.
You know, I will, after we have a full discussion, I will, but I don't want to get mired in suggestions of names, et cetera. But after the board has had a full discussion and we've had all our input, then I'll turf it out, okay?
That's fine. Thank you
Okay.
very much.
You're welcome. Okay. Okay, on to the next item. Consider amendments to the water conservation measures. Do I see Tom Temple? I don't believe anybody's on to give us an update. Last we knew, things were going swimmingly well, so. Mr. Nacastro, yes.
Just apropos of that topic, yesterday the Water and Sewer Committee met, and Mr. Temple was asked that same question, and he indicated he wasn't recommending any changes at this time.
And that's with well 5 offline at this point. I just want to.
Yes, it's either offline or about to go offline.
It's offline.
Yeah, okay.
Definitely offline. Yeah, so it's good. Of course, our population has decreased by 30,000, thereabouts. Okay. On to our consent agenda. We have 2 items this evening. We have the signing of the state election warrant. Interesting to read, and everybody signed, so thank you so much. And then an entertainment permit, Monomoy Community Services, Witches Walk Dance Lesson, parking spaces at 549 Main Street, at the 549 Main Street lot on October 29th, 2022, from 6 to 8. I see Teresa here. Any questions or issues with that whatsoever? Okay. Ms. Davis.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda, signed state election warrant, and entertainment permit for Monomoy Community Services.
Second.
Super. Okay, we'll take a vote. Mr. Nacastro.
Aye.
Ms. Davis.
Aye.
Mr. Shell.
Aye.
Mr. Metters.
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Have fun. Thank you very much. Yep, thanks for being here. Next item of business is our public comments on our business agenda. We have 3 items, as we noted earlier. The request by the COA and the Park and Rec Commissioners has been withdrawn for a future agenda item. We have a presentation by the Barnstable County Department of Human Services on the opioid abatement funds. Then we have the role of the Select Board with respect to anonymous monetary donations, and then short-term rentals, which I will allow comment after we've had a mature discussion at the board level. So, and after that, we have committee appointments on the Bikeway Committee, and then a release of a series of executive committee minutes. So, executive session minutes, I should say. So any comments out there on what we have going forward, other than the short-term rentals working group? Elaine, is that your hand up for this item, for one of these items?
Yes, it is. Thank you very much. Yes, my first, I have 2. One is for the appropriateness regarding anonymous donations. I hope the board will not enter into such an agreement again. By way of history, in 2017 at town meeting, we approved the purchase of, for 2.5 million on the condition that the building was to be preserved. We were told it was. In April of, I guess it was 2022, we learned that the building was no longer salvageable. And I think it came as a surprise to many people because it was under ownership of the town. It made no sense that it had fallen into disrepair unless it had been neglected. At town meeting on May 14th, we were being asked to approve 1.5 million for renovation of that property. At that point, everybody in the crowd was surprised to hear that there was an anonymous donor who was going to pay the 1.5 million. No conditions were provided at that time. We did not get to see, nor did the select board get to see, the actual arrangement and conditions until August 30th. And the first milestone required that the building be demolished. So then it kind of made sense to me that that was one of the conditions. I have a problem with the fact that the town manager and staff all know who the donor is, but the taxpayers own that property, and we don't know who they are, or who he is, or who she is. In the donation agreement, it's clear that there are significant restrictions on the property for 10 years. And what's of more concern is that it's being held by the National Philanthropic Trust. And the agreement says that the trust is solely an obligation of the account and not the general obligation of the trust or its other funds. It also says the National Philanthropic Trust will use reasonable efforts to prevent incurring future grant obligations for the account that would cause the account to have insufficient assets to meet all of its outstanding grant obligations. If, however, for any reason, the account at any time in the future lacks sufficient funds to make all payments under the agreement when due in full, the trust reserves the right to reduce or revoke any or all payments due under the agreement upon written notice to the grantee. During the discussion on August 30th, town council weighed in and he said it was a gray area whether or not we could hold them to that or what would be done if there were insufficient funds available. But despite that, it was accepted. I think it was inappropriate and imprudent for us to enter into a contract where public property owned by the town has so many conditions on it, and without us knowing why or by whom. And I think that this contract, this agreement should have been developed and presented to the public prior to town meeting so that we knew what the conditions were when we approved that at town meeting on May 14th. Instead, we had to wait 3 months to find out what the conditions actually were. I think it might have been defeated if we had known that this property was going to be restricted the way it was. So those are my comments on that. Thank you very much. And the second one is about the executive session minutes release. As you can see, there are 23 minutes you're going to release on the Airport Commission dating back from 2014 to 2021. And I think this is a good example of how hard it's going to be for the public to find these if they're not posted somewhere on the town website. One of my recommendations, I think the simplest, would be to have a link on the select board page that said executive session minutes and simply take this agenda summary and post it there. That way the public can go and look up those dates. It's going to be cumbersome, but at least we'll have it in one place so that we can look up those dates and read the minutes. Otherwise, there is no way we will ever find them because the only place outside of the minutes next week will be under all of these dates, and we won't have access to that information. So I would hope you would reconsider that. It's a simple matter. It can be a PDF file, and I don't see there's any reason legally why that can't be done. Thank you very much. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Elaine. On to our first item on our business agenda, opioid abatement funds. Mandy Speakman in the Barnstable County Department of Human Services. Mandy, welcome back to Chatham. Delighted to have you here.
Good evening. I'm delighted to be back here. So I'm delighted to be back here as Mandy Speakman, Deputy Director for Barnstable County Department of Human Services. So I see my PowerPoint on the screen here. Is this showing up for the public?
It will in a sec.
Awesome. Thank you. So it seems like your meeting is swimming right along, but I kept my presentation concise, knowing how busy you usually are. So happy to answer any questions and spend some time, whatever time you need this evening. My colleague Kate Lena, who is the Substance Use Prevention Program Manager, was not able to be here tonight, but we're both available to the community as you work your way through this process of deciding how to spend these funds. So lots of information in a very short period of time. And my comment is these slides are very content heavy, and that was purposeful, hoping that after the fact or as you work through this process that you can access the packet that we've provided tonight, which includes these slides, a memo, and then all of the attachments that we'll be referring to throughout this presentation. So with that, I just want to kind of orient you all and anyone in the listening public to what is in the packet, which is a copy of these slides, so you don't have to try to remember or take notes, a memo that expands upon what will be a brief presentation tonight. We could talk for hours about this. And any of the supporting documents and attachments that I refer to are also in that packet. What Kate and I have learned through this process is that it's really important to draw your attention to what the role of the county is and isn't in this process. So Barnstable County is not awarding these funds. These funds are not flowing through the county. Rather, our role at this point is to bring light to the topic, share whatever information we have, bring best practices, as well as the feedback that has come from the grassroots community coalition that is RSAC, the Regional Substance Addiction Coalition, and we'll get into that a little bit further. So just to give you a quick background, in 2021, Mass Attorney General Maura Healey announced a $26 billion resolution. This was a settlement agreement with opioid manufacturers and distributors in their role for overprescribing opioids. $500 million of that money is coming right to Massachusetts. So lots of questions about who gets the money, where's it going, and how does it have to be spent. So my quick overview of that is funds are being paid out directly to multiple groups. And these groups include both individuals and their families, so people directly affected by substance use, towns and cities, such as the town of Chatham, counties, such as the Barnstable County, and Massachusetts Department of Public Health. So in the packet also is a spreadsheet with very tiny numbers that you might need to either blow up on your computer screen or use your readers to see. But it shows the 15 towns on Cape Cod and how those funds are going to be spent, distributed out over the next 17 years. So you'll see in some places it will say 18 years, but it's a double payment the first year. So that is one of the unique benefits of this funding source is it has longevity. So it really gives you the opportunity to be thoughtful and planful over a long period of time. So in this first year, in FY22, the town of Chatham will receive, if you haven't already, $39,850. So that's the pot of money that we're talking about for Chatham for FY22. As of right now, that money has to be spent by June 30th. I understand from the Attorney General's office that they were working on a strategy to allow those funds to roll over, but as of right now, June 30th is the deadline. So you'll want to have probably a plan A to get that money spent and a plan B if it should be allowable to roll it over. Perhaps you might want to do that. So in addition to the financial penalties to the opioid manufacturers and distributors, part of the settlement are industry changes that are designed to prevent this from ever happening again. And so to support this work and to help inform how the funds are spent that are going to the Mass Department of Public Health, there is an Opioid Recovery and Remediation Fund Advisory Council. And this has representation from all over the Commonwealth and includes direct representation from Cape Cod. Susie Hopman from Falmouth Human Services represents all of us at that state level. So in the packet is a lot of information on exactly what the guidelines are for spending these funds, but I'm giving you the kind of quick overview here. Part of what the state keeps repetitively encouraging is the pooling of funds, particularly for communities who have smaller pots of money. The idea is to make it as impactful as possible for individuals and families who've been directly affected by these substance use issues. And the other key point is that funds cannot be used to fund care that's already being reimbursed by the state, and this includes Mass Health and BSAS, which is the Bureau of Substance Addiction Services. But if you identify services that they're already providing, you can supplement and add to and fill some gaps in those services to more support those participants. So these are the 7 broad topic areas that the funding must be spent within. Again, I'm going to keep referring back to the packet. There's lots of information in there, so as you have conversations about how you want to spend these funds, you're going to want to refer back and look at the nitty-gritty details. But just quickly, so I think that these 7 categories were very mindfully written to be broad, so to give communities as much opportunity to figure out what works for them, because it's going to be different from town to town. So we have opioid use disorder treatment, supporting people in treatment and recovery, connections to care, harm reduction, addressing the needs of criminal justice involved people, supporting pregnant or parenting women, their families, including babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome. They want us to work to prevent the misuse of opioids and implement prevention education. So RSAC, I mentioned a moment ago, is the county's Regional Substance Addiction Council. This is a group that is made up of providers, stakeholders, family members, people who are in recovery, stakeholders who are directly affected by substance use and specifically by the opioid addiction crisis. Throughout the process of the release of these opioid remediation funds, RSAC has spent a lot of time both in general membership meetings and in working groups discussing what the needs of our entire region are, what some best practices and evidence-based practices are that fit within those 7 categories that I just spoke about. And they put forth recommendations and ideas. And again, every town gets to decide for itself, so these are recommendations meant to give you a starting point for discussion and an idea of where you could go with it. Like the state, RSAC is really encouraging towns to pool their funds and be as impactful as possible with these monies. And the recommendations in these next few slides are evidence-based, and they were collected through the coalition. So it was truly a regional effort. So, well, this first one is up. It's prevention. And I will quickly go through these next slides. Prevention, harm reduction, prevention, harm reduction, recovery, and treatment. However, before I delve into that, I just want to talk about the opportunity that this presents, not just to think about how you want to spend these funds, but knowing that Chatham has a human services committee, but does not have a substance use coalition, that this could be an opportunity to come up with a a more comprehensive plan for substance use in the community as well, whether that's bringing in the Human Services Committee or a Substance Use Coalition component. Whatever way the town goes, however, as you work through this process, Kate and I in the Human Services Office is really interested in supporting the community however we can, and as you hopefully come up with a comprehensive plan to address these issues. So I'm not going to read you the slides because I know that you can go back and do that. It drives people crazy. But these are bulleted points of the work that was done by RSAC. So in prevention, in harm reduction, in recovery, and in treatment, these were the ideas that came forth. And again, gives you a starting place to start having a conversation if you haven't already. This slide is just a snapshot of a bigger spreadsheet. Actually, I think it's on several pages in the packet. And this is something that we worked on and called it a menu of program examples. This is certainly not an exhaustive list of everything that you could do with these monies, but what it does is gives you an idea of some of the gaps and needs that have been identified by RSAC, what the cost, the potential budget could be to the town, and some resources, whether it's an organization or a person to reach out to if you have an interest in gaining more information, could this work for Chatham? In some of these examples, you're going to see budgets of $0 to the town. And the idea there was to further encourage you to think about, again, a more holistic and comprehensive plan to tackle substance use in the town, with the opioid remediation funds being just a part of that. And think 17 years, like you have longevity of funding, you have assured funding over an extended period of time. That doesn't happen very often. So wrapping it up here, this last slide gives you quick phone numbers and websites to the most, to the organizations that can answer the most commonly asked questions. Because the county is not the funding source, it's not flowing through the county, we can't provide traditional technical assistance. But if you're having community conversations and you find that you're needing answers to technical questions, ideas, or you're not even sure where to go with your question, I hope that you'll come to us, because we can be the connector, we can be your I&R office, we can help get you to the right person to get your questions answered. Again, all in the packet, so much information to digest. And with that, there is the way to contact Kate or I anytime, and I am happy to answer any questions.
Well, Mandy, thank you so much. Good presentation. And I am familiar with a lot of the programs that were listed in that spreadsheet. The Alternative Peer Group and the Recovery Support Navigators and Recovery Coaches, they've been proven to be very effective. So I agree that it'd probably be smart to kind of get the Human Services Committee wrapped into this and then maybe partner with other towns as well. But I'm going to open it up to comments here. Mr. Metters, and then I'll go down the line here.
Thank you, Mandy, for the presentation. Just a quick question. So I'm just trying to think of how to tackle this. We have the allotted funds for the upcoming fiscal year. And we have right now, you said June 1st deadline to basically use those funds, which may or may not have a carryover element to it, but we don't know that yet. So how do you approach something like that? Because I would think anything you put on the table, there's going to be support to do it now, as soon as possible, but make an impact as soon as possible. So how do you kind of tackle that element, not knowing you can carry some of it over? And then I think this question out a little bit better here, but the expenditure of all our funds by June 1st comes off of our books. Say we had a couple $1,000s left in our kitty. Could we then shift that over to a regional element and would come off our books? Would that qualify as clearing our books to use that money? I mean, but if I read it correctly, they're looking at local needs, but also regional needs. So do we keep that in mind in this conversation? I just want some clarity on that.
So, June 30th, so it runs on the fiscal year, so not June 1st.
June
So
30th,
you have
okay.
an extra month there. And whether you choose to spend it locally, within a regional agreement or some of both, that absolutely counts as long as it's off the books. The state will be requiring, they will have reporting and there was another word, but they'll have reporting guidelines that they're going to be issuing to the town. So you're going to have to account for how you spent the money, and if you didn't spend it. It hasn't been made clear to us what will happen, but we've been told that yes, right now it is the fiscal year. So I think that to provide a little bit more clarity or direction, bringing people to the table, and I know group discussions and soliciting community input is not usually a quick and efficient process, but I think in this case where the monies are so explicitly meant to serve people and families who have been affected by this, the opioid crisis, that having some of their voices at the table to help decide how to spend the money is going to be really critical. The helpful thing is, going back to that RSAC menu of suggested programs, identified gaps in service, being able to jump on and expand services or programs that are already in place. Those are not easy, but they certainly could be quick, and they could, you could be assured that they are addressing needs that have been identified. Because while each community certainly will want to decide for itself what's going to work within your own town borders, there are needs that transcend town borders, and there are things like transportation. Every meeting of any kind for any board, committee, or report brings up transportation. In this case, that is true as well. So transportation to get to medical appointments, treatment, therapy, being in Chatham, not easily accessible to or from anywhere. You could jump on maybe with a neighboring town or two to provide the Uber-like transportation. I don't know if the RTA is making it available yet, but they have the Smart Dart, and I know that they are starting to roll it out to other age groups and you can buy vouchers. So you could buy a certain number of vouchers that would go to residents who are identified as needing to get to treatment in Hyannis, say in the Hyannis area, that would count. So those are, it's going to have to be a quick conversation, but I think you can have it quickly and have it also have a lot of value, and also be comfortable that you can do this first year quickly, but then you can also take the time to have a comprehensive and inclusive conversation thinking 17 years. Where do we go from here?
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thanks, Mandy. This was really informative, and the opioid issue it's everywhere. We can't say Chatham hasn't been impacted greatly, especially recently. It's just not going away. So I really like the idea that we would, and this is to Jill, is probably just, or to the board actually, is to address the issue to the Human Services Committee with the idea that they would be tapping into the resources that are readily available, tap into some of the local community nonprofits that have been working on this issue for many, many years, and look at that three-prong approach of filling services, jumping into existing services and gaps. And for the next, we have 9 months. That's not a lot of time, but that's, a good amount. I think that would be really good work for Human Services to do. And with these resources available, I think we could get some quick answers as to where we could spend our money. And then, again, look at long-term programming. One thing comes to mind with the regional approach is definitely working with the school system, Monomoy Regional School System, partnering with Harwich, and to see where we can fund opportunities in the school system for education awareness and treatment help and services for those that are addicted and have issues of towards recovery. So that's my recommendation. Thanks.
And can I just respond to Shereen?
Please, Mandy, yes.
And to that point, Joy Jordan is part of the prevention work group, is part of the RSAC. And the prevention work group is also our core planning group for the regional assessment on substance use that happens to be coinciding with the distribution of these funds. It was coincidental, but good timing. So right away, you already have somebody that is up to speed.
Super, thank you, Mandy.
Thank you, Mandy. Mr. Nacastro.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I endorse the two proposals that Shireen just made. I really do think the Human Services Committee is a good place to start, and maybe they can come up with a proposal for how to spend these funds, and obviously working with the school district. Mandy, thank you for the presentation. Nice to see you back, obviously. We missed you at the Council on Aging yesterday, but the meetings are pretty long these days. We're struggling with the same project that you were working with. I had a question on the Barnstable County information sheet. It says 40% of the abatement funds coming into the Commonwealth will be allocated to the state's municipalities. I assume that's this program.
This program and the county. The county's portion is about $7,000 this year,
Okay.
so I mean, it's really a very small
Then it-
amount, but yes.
Then it says 60% of the abatement funds will be allocated to the opioid recovery and remediation fund. I assume that's a state fund, to be further dispensed, be dispensed into the community through the Department of Public Health grants. Are you familiar with that process? Are we eligible to apply for grants as well?
So there isn't anything that's been announced. So that is the Opioid Recovery and Remediation Advisory Council that I mentioned earlier, that Susie Hotman from the Falmouth Human Services is our representative to that state board or council. So they are doing their work right now to figure out how to spend those funds. Part of that is that that group that I mentioned, 4 different groups that the money is going to. Part of that is those individuals and families directly affected. That flows from that fund as well.
Will the county be in a position to keep us informed as to how this process unfolds going forward?
Absolutely.
Okay, great. Thank you.
And that was my comment to my colleague was, we were really happy that 14 of the 15 towns responded and said, yes, with an invitation to please come and give a presentation like this. And I said, this isn't just a one-time roadshow. Now, because it's 17 years, we get to come back and, stay in touch with you. And, things could change 6 months from now. So what, best practices, new, innovative programs and services. So yes, I hope that we will absolutely stay connected.
Thank you again.
Okay, Mr. Shell.
The thing I'm interested, and by the way, thank you for a very comprehensive presentation, both in writing and on the on the papers, as well as your comments. I'm trying to understand what is the process to get to the point where the funds are going out with confidence or pre-clearance, whichever it is, that they are approved uses of the funds. And obviously, we start, and by the way, I would endorse Shireen's proposal to start with the Human Services Committee. But once we have a plan, which hopefully we will in the next very short period of time, this is what we want to do. How do we get to the point where the funds are on our hands, they're being spent, and it is either, as I said, pre-approved or with confidence that it is an approved use of the funds?
So there's no central way to track who has received their funds. I know some of the towns on the Cape have already received their funds and they're in their accounts. I don't know for Chatham if that's happened yet, but it's happening as we speak. Those funds are flowing out to the towns and cities. As far as approved uses, there is no approval process, so the state has issued the guidance that's in your packet, those 7 broad areas that you want to focus on, and then once you come up with an idea, that you delve into the specifics and make sure that it's an allowable use. It's comparable to any, grant funding that you might apply for and get, and that you'll be held accountable through the reporting requirements that the state will have. So they will be tracking, that towns and cities are using it in an approved way, but it's sort of a self-check based on all of the guidance that they have issued to us.
Thank you.
And that's where our office comes in, like if you want to have a conversation about, is this an approved use, is it a good use, we're happy to be kind of help you be a sounding board for that.
So I wouldn't be unfairly rephrasing your answer to say that what we need to do is get a program together and get busy, get to the point of being able to implement that with funds that either we have got in hand, I don't know if we do or not, but are about to if we don't.
Correct. No, absolutely correct. And Mandy's a quick question, and I'm going to go off to Judith, Giorgio, but the 39,850, is that already doubled down? Is that times two?
That's your first year payment.
So about 20K.
It's not the same
Yeah.
amount every year. So
Right.
if you look at that teeny tiny,
Yeah,
you
at the
know.
end. It gets down to 16K at the end, but that's 17 years out.
So next year in so what are we in FY '23 now? So in FY '24, oh, no, we're in FY '20.
We're in 22 right now,
We're in
FY
22,
'23, actually,
But this
23.
first year is a double payment. So the
Okay,
the following year's payment is 21,000.
Okay. But we're not getting the
100.
39 and the 21.
Nope, this year,
Okay,
you're
all right.
getting that 39,850 is your
all right.
double payment.
Okay, thank you so much. And just to follow up on Mike's comment, just briefly, the vision, I think, is to have, just remand this to the Human Services Committee and have them come up with a recommendation on what programming makes sense for Chatham in terms of education, prevention, and treatment. And I think we have, it was a wonderful list of programs that you provided, Mandy, of evidence-based programs that have already born to be successful, or have already proven successful. So I think that's a great place for the Human Services Committee to start, some of which I'm very familiar with. Okay, Judith Giorgio, I see your hand up. Please, Judith.
Hi, thank you. As you can imagine, the public health community has been talking about this, especially the health agents, for the last few months, knowing that this money was coming. And we actually had a meeting yesterday with Kate Lena, and she presented similar information that Mandy has presented. I think it's a great idea, that Shireen's proposal to remand it to the Human Services Committee. From talking to the other health agents, we're all kind of, all the towns seem to be at the same place with this. They're just starting to try and figure it out. But, I think it's a short amount of time to spend the money. So like Mandy said, we could do something quickly this year and be working for the long-range plan to move ahead with the money. It's a great opportunity for the town and the region. We know that opioid addiction is not, it crosses all town lines. So a regional approach, I think, is a really great way to go. I also see a large need in Chatham and all the communities for mental health navigators. Outer Cape Health does some of this work, so that might be something that we can look at using the money with. I'm here to help, and I'd love to be part of the discussion. And as I said, the health agents are discussing it, and we'll be available for information and help on this, right from the start. So that's all I had to say.
Super, Judith.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. DeCastro has a follow-up, as does Ms. Davis.
Yeah, I have a question for Judith. Judith, would it be appropriate to include the Board of Health in this matter, or is it sufficient to involve you as the health agent?
There may be a board member that would like to, participate. We have several doctors and a
Yeah.
nurse are on our board. But I think I think the Human Services Committee at this point is the place to go, because they already know the local groups and are
Right.
familiar with the agencies, and I think that would be the smart place to start at this point.
Well, I think we'll have a motion on the table shortly, and I think probably that should encourage the Human Services Committee to reach out to our health department or Board of Health just to get some input
Right, I would think so.
along those lines.
Okay, motion. Ms. Davis.
Mr. Chair, I move to remand this issue to the Human Services Committee to discuss a short-term plan for the initial funding of the opioid recovery remediation funds, and then to start to work on a long-term plan for the town of Chatham, keeping in mind perhaps a regional approach. And that's a little wordy, but you got the gist.
You got the gist. Okay, let's take a vote. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Mandy, thank you very, very much. Great,
Thank you
great to see
for
you
so
again.
much time, appreciate it.
You bet, you bet. Thank you. Okay, our next item on the agenda is the appropriate role of the Select Board in regard to the negotiation and acceptance of anonymous monetary donation and agreements. And this is a request by Select Board member Dina Castro. So, Mr. Nacastro, I'm going to turf it to you to start, and then we'll have a discussion. This is an agenda item that you brought forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for putting this on the agenda. This arose in my mind as a result of some process issues that occurred to me when we were dealing with the Eldridge Garage project as that unfolded. I have no desire to revisit or reconsider the agreement that the board unanimously approved, but I think a couple of things are worth discussing in terms of the future when situations arise and we have anonymous donation proposals. And in my time as a public official in this town, both on the Finance Committee and here, we've had only 2 experiences that I can recall involving an anonymous donation or proposed anonymous gift. So they're not very frequent, but they're always a little dicey. You may recall that back in, I think, 2017, there was a proposal to put a conservation restriction on the Grange property on Depot Street in exchange for the town receiving financial contributions. The prospective donor ultimately self-disclosed to dispel any notion that there was any impropriety, and they were very respectable people. That matter was went before a town meeting on the warrant and was ultimately rejected by the town. When we were presented, I have to make reference to the process on Eldridge in order to make my point. When we were presented with the agreement for consideration, there were a couple of issues that I thought were of significance from a legal standpoint, one involving the measure of discretion that was given to the intermediate party with whom we had the contract, and the other had to do with the right of the immediate party to control the or limit or even reduce or eliminate payments. And there were, in return, there were obligations, or there was an obligation imposed upon the town, I should use the singular, with respect to the use of that parcel. And when you have a circumstance and the donation is from an anonymous donor, and there are a limited number of people communicating with the donor, either from the staff or on the board, I think it's important to try to be as efficient as possible, but as transparent as possible. And I think it would be best if, as the process is ongoing, the process of negotiation is ongoing, that the town negotiators come back to the full board and lay out what is being considered so that we would have an opportunity to vet those issues before we're presented with a final product. I hasten to recognize that this process does not fall under the exceptions to the open meeting law, as Jill and I have talked about. But I would have no problem with that being discussed publicly, openly, because we talked about some of those issues the night that this was being proposed. So I just throw that out. It may be another 6 or 7 years before we have anybody else propose an anonymous donation to us. And I have every hope that the project at Eldridge is going to turn out in a way that's that fulfills the intention and plan that the Eldridge Garage Committee came up with. But I just really wanted to throw that out. I'm not looking for any votes or anything. It's just an informational piece from from my standpoint, it really was something that, as you remember from that meeting, that really concerned me. So I felt it important to bring it forward tonight. And if others have comments on it, that's fine. If you want to move on to the next agenda item, that's fine with me, too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nacastro. Comments from select board members? Mr. Metters, I mean,
I'll make mine brief so we can move on to the next agenda item. And no, I thank you for bringing it forward. I mean, I will admit, I was very somewhat reluctant in my vote in the Eldridge Garage process. I would not go back and change my vote. I'll be honest with you right there. You know, I was the biggest element of concern for me was the lack of information on an anonymous donor. I think it's a very awkward position to be put into as a town leader, having limited information to figure out what is the best interest for my responsibility to the town of Chatham. So I guess in general, I could see improvements being made to the process. So anyone sitting in this seat can do their due diligence and take the best action on behalf of the town. So I don't have any issue being this brought up, and if there's improvements to be made, fully support it. So those are my general thoughts.
okay, Ms. Davis.
So moving forward with this, and I was at the table for the negotiations on this, and I don't think that there was any malintent in the process. I think it was simply a work in progress that was going to be presented to the board. I think the timeliness was the lead up to town meeting in the short period of time, and there could have been possibly some more time involved. I just want to put it on the table. There was nothing there to indicate that we were trying to do anything nefarious in any way. It was simply a matter of timing, trust building with the donor, vetting out certain aspects of it, and when it came to us as in an open form, it came to us as I guess I would have put it as any packet would come. But I think there was a matter of timing here that was short term.
Mr. Shell, thank you.
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. I just think in general, there are bound to be, and this was maybe not in my view, a particularly critical example of circumstances where in order to explore, pursue, and ultimately take advantage of an opportunity for the town, there have to be judgments made. There have to be, in some sense, reliance on a smaller number of our group, if you will, our board or the staff, in terms of assuring us that certain things that might be of concern are adequately and appropriately addressed. And I think any time you have a contract like this one, there are a number of factors that have to be taken into account, and they're not easily resolved one way or the other. But obviously, the benefit to the town is one of the very big ones. The breadth of any impact of any condition has to be considered, on whom it falls. Does it benefit the donor exclusively, or is it a more general benefit to the town or some small segment of that? I think all those things were taken into account, and I thought, as somebody who's seen a process like that in different corporate contexts, I thought it was absolutely unexceptionable. So I appreciate the work that was done, and I was very comfortable as somebody who was not, who was the party relying on others to give comfort on the issues that were there, including our council. So I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shell. Mr. Nacastro.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the comments of my colleagues. I just wanted to say, just to clarify something, I was not involved in the negotiations, but I was acquainted with what was transpiring up to the time of town meeting, and I was fully supportive of it. I'm really was not. Really tonight, I'm not speaking about the time leading up to town meeting, but the negotiating process following town meeting, up to the time when we were presented with the document. And like as Mr. Shell, in my experience as a municipal attorney, as a city solicitor, I handled a number of contracts. And all I'm saying is I just think that there were some issues. It would have benefited us to have an opportunity to sort those out as a group rather than individually. In this case, when we got the packet, the Friday before we voted on it, that one of the issues I mentioned tonight, I undertook to follow up on that directly with town council through the town manager over that weekend to get that issue sorted out in my head. And there was a remaining issue that we talked about that night. I just think it would have been at least beneficial for me if we had had an opportunity as a group to consider those issues in general. That's the only point I'm making. And I totally understand what Mr. Shell is saying. You do make judgments. The law is not 100% black and white in all instances, and you try to see whether something is advantageous to the town or not. And in the end, we all voted for that. So thank you.
Mr. Shell?
I just have a question. Can maybe Jill, you can help me with this, clarify exactly what the agenda item was that was passed at town meeting? My recollection was it was the town spending the money on the project with disclosure that there might be a donation, but not much more than that. But we did not approve the idea of a donation or anything of that nature. Is that a correct recollection?
Yeah, the article was to approve the project. Funding was appropriated with a potential offset by grants or donations. I believe that's what it read.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Nicastro, and for comments. My only comment is I hope we have the opportunity to be more transparent as a select board in the very near future. I think, I would welcome that opportunity. So thank you. The next item on the agenda is a short-term rentals working group. Its inception, its makeup. At our last meeting, you asked the select board chair and the health agent and the town manager to create a working group. So we've come back with some suggestions on kind of roles of the working group. So I think the first issue is, what say you on, do you want this working group or not? Number one, and you did task us with coming back to you with some recommendations, and we've done that. You all know, I think, at this point, that the town of Orleans has voted rather resoundingly not to have a short-term rental bylaw. This was last night at their special, I believe. So, not that we have to do what Orleans does, but it does give one pause to just kind of re-examine the issue as to its import. I have my own opinion, and I'll certainly voice that when the time is appropriate. But right now, you have in front of you a recommendation of the select board chair and another member of the select board, which I've touched on the shoulder and asked, and he's accepted. And then we have a Board of Health membership, which they may be in favor of this, they may not be, but Noble Hanson and perhaps John Beckley. Planning board member, which I have not named, or we have not even suggested a name.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just received word that the planning board chair has suggested Warren Chain.
Okay, very good. Rental leasing agent realtor. Now, I have a question mark there. Is Kim Robbins a realtor, Corey?
Yes.
Yeah, so you mentioned to me that she was of interest in this.
She passed comment that if we were looking for members, that should be open to be considered for the membership, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I've asked David Wickham, who does have rental properties here in town, former select board member for 12 years, and Dick Hosmer, who I voluntold at our last meeting, unfortunately, and I just think Dick does a great job. He did a great job with the waterways. And then 2 members of the public at large, and certainly open to some discussion there, I think, amongst our board. And then, I'm going to open it up. I think others have other notions as well. And so I think I'm going to start with Mr. Nicastro, I think has some notions here. And we'll go right down the line if you like, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I support the creation of a working group. The Board of Health asked us to create one, and appreciate the effort that you and the town manager made to put this prospective listing together. I was concerned that it might be skewed a little bit too much in the direction of the property owners / landlords, and I was looking for some additional representation. I'm very pleased if Warren Chain is willing to do that. He strikes me as a very careful analyst of things, and I don't know that he has any particular bias in this case. I'm not worried. I'm not worried about his participation, so that gives me some reassurance. I do think that there should be a second Board of Health member, and John Beckley would be ideal. It's their proposal, and I think they should, be allowed to run with it. I was at the Water and Sewer Committee yesterday, and at the end of the meeting, one of the members asked about this and reminded me that there was, as originally, and back in 2017, I think, or 19, the proposal was to send this all over to 3 committees: Water and Sewer, Planning, was it Planning?
Finance.
And Economic Development and Finance. And that it didn't materialize in terms of a result. But the indication given to me was that they would like to be involved in this. So I would suggest that we add a member of the Water and Sewer Advisory Committee. And I did speak with the chair afterward, and he thought that was something they'd like to do, he would like to see happen. So I'd like to add that. I don't know whether we add another. Let me see, that's 2 members, so you would still have an odd number, which is, I think, what you want. I was going to suggest that, until Warren Chain's name was mentioned, I was going to suggest adding another public member. I don't have anybody in mind.
Yep.
But I wouldn't want to make it an even number, because then you wouldn't be able to get a majority vote easily. So those are my thoughts. And I would say, Jill, this is going to be, even though it's a working group, because it's at the initiative of the Select Board, it's subject to the open meeting law. They would have public notice, public participation at meetings, and minutes, right?
Yes.
Yes,
And it
all
would
the
be
above.
led by Judy Giorgio, would be the staff lead on it.
On the model of the parking group. So those are my thoughts.
Yep, thank you. Good thoughts. Ms. Davis, yes, please.
I agree with Dean on the recommendations. I think Warren Chain would be a wonderful addition to this if he's willing. Also feel that there's a little heaviness here. We know that, we have a lot of realtors and people that lease their properties, and they probably do great recording, and I'm not sure that's the biggest concern here, are those folks. And I want them to keep in mind when they look at this, that when they look at the what we're trying to do here. I think that we should add somebody, or at least reach out to economic development to see if there's somebody on that committee or 1 or 2 that would be willing to look at this from that viewpoint. I was the one that recommended to the town manager and to the chair that Brad Schiff be involved. He's a great facilitator. He's worked really well on meetings that we've had in the past, and I think he was willing to participate in this. So other than that, I'm really supportive of creating this at the recommendation of the Board of Health.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Mr. Shell?
First of all, with respect to the names, I don't have probably any really well-informed input other than to say Warren Chain, I think, is a great suggestion. I strongly agree with Shireen that 1 or 2 members from the Economic Development Committee would be a very good thing, and I would endorse that. I want to step back. By the way, I with respect to her comment about record keeping and rental agents and so forth, I think the one aspect there are 2 aspects that concern me about that. The first is the willingness of those and the rigor with which those agencies actually do the job that's contemplated. And 2, the other thing that concerns me is the incremental cost that's assessed for that. And I could imagine that there could be some significant cost imposed by those whether it's Airbnb or I don't care who it is. But apart from that, I understand where she's coming from on that point. I do want to say I had a long conversation with somebody who is a public official whose jurisdiction includes Nantucket yesterday. And I just heard a little bit of a narrative of their process with this, which has been long, arduous, and to date, not successful in terms of enacting legislation or a bylaw. And I am a little concerned, over a period of 2 years or more, I am a little concerned that we devote a whole bunch of effort and resources and time and energy to this to no ultimate result. I guess it will be the job of the this working group that we're constituting to look at all aspects of this. I would hope that they would, to some extent, start from scratch in asking the question, what are we trying to do here? What are the issues that we're concerned with that need legislation, and what's the best way to accomplish our objectives with the least intrusive regulatory bite that we can muster. And I'm not convinced, frankly, that the draft that we've looked at achieves that purpose. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. I thought it'd be a daunting task, to be honest with you. And I don't know, perhaps I still believe it's going to be a daunting task. But I just want you to know that I've asked Corey, our vice chairman, to serve as well, along with me. And he's accepted. He said yes, so I'd very much like to have Corey involved. He's close to the action and kind of gets it from a short-term rental standpoint. And if he has any issues, he'll recuse himself, but he's all in, so that's great. I totally get your last comments, Michael. The last thing we want to do is work for 2 years and come up dry. But I do think there's enough need in the community and enough noise in the community, enough concern in the community to try to address the issue. So I think it's a go. I think the Board of Health has asked us to do so, and I think we do. I think we go. And if along the way we decide we're beating our head against the wall, or Sisyphus, pushing the rock up the hill and having it roll back down on us forever, then we'll give up the ghost. But I think we have to at least make a game attempt. Mr. Metters, please, I ask you for comment.
The only other addition I'm going to add to the comments is, I think we're going to have a hardy-looking group. It'd be good. The more input, the better. But my only thought is reflective of what happened in Orleans last night, that early in the process, we should get as much public input as possible to kind of get a sense of the best direction and what best tone this group maybe want to be discussing, because I'd hate for us to be putting X amount of hours and time and effort into something that, may have a roadblock or two in front of us without recognizing that roadblock early. So, I think we should go through this process. I think we should get this working group together and start the discussions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Metters. So I'm going to have Jill kind of give a rundown. I think we're going to need one more person, and I know we have. I've never met her, but she's here this evening. Kim Burson, is that you out there in the? Hi, Kim. Welcome. You were very vocal and very thoughtful in your comments last meeting. But let's see who we've got as a lineup, Jill, please, and then we'll see. I think we're going to need one more person.
Sure, so we have 2 members from the Select Board, 2 members from the Board of Health, 1 from the Planning Board. We have 1 from the rental leasing agent realtor. We have 2 property owners with short-term rentals. We have 2 at-large members who are identified. Actually, I should let you know who's. So the 2 property owners with a short-term rental, Dick Hosmer has confirmed that he will participate, and we have David Whitcomb, who is always also confirmed. And then the 2 members currently for the public at-large, we have Kim Burson and Brad Schiff.
Okay, so and that total is what?
So let me keep going, I got a couple more.
All right.
And then I have 1 Water and Sewer Advisory
Right.
Committee member and 1 EDC committee member, so it's a total of 12 right now. So we'd like to have an
one
odd
more.
number.
Mr. Metters.
Did we have anyone, say, quote, at large that has reached out to you guys?
I did have a person reach out to me who owns, let me just see if I printed it out. I had a Jerry Gordon reach out to me, And they own the Nantucket House for over 22 years and have run it as a bed and breakfast and as a short-term rental. And so they had, if we needed someone, they had said that they would like to serve.
Mr. Shell, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the only, and I don't know anything about them, so no comment on that, but I think Shireen and I did say maybe even 2 members of the EDC, which I would endorse.
And I would as well. It's just sometimes it's difficult to get them to a meeting. I just, but I would endorse that. I think we ought to at least reach out and ask. I think that's a good move,
Yeah, well,
Yes, sir.
Matters.
reach out to them, reach out to the EDC, they haven't had a meeting for quite some time, so they're gonna have to get a meeting together and decide if they want to represent 1 or 2, so hopefully in a timely manner, we can get them going, so, yeah.
Mr. DeCastro, go ahead.
I guess I'm wondering why 2 members from EDC? And why shouldn't that?
Plugged in.
You know, again, I can't, when I took a look at this initially, I thought we had too many from one side, and that we needed someone from the public who's a year-round property owner that, reflects either a non-position from the start or a position of someone who's concerned about the potential overuse of rentals. Because that's the other position. I don't know to what extent this is a problem in town. It is a problem. I think we all recognize there is a problem in some respects in this town. How extensive it is, I don't know. But that's, last time we had 3 committees and we were going to pull someone from the finance, well, we were going to send it to the finance committee. But I don't know why, I'm willing to be educated as to why EDC makes, should have 2.
I don't. I think what we're looking for is input. You're right. And you're right. We should have somebody from the general public that is not a stakeholder sitting here. So let's just throw it out there again and see if there may be somebody who would be interested.
So we're seeking 1 more member at large.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, fine.
So
Ideally, that is not a realtor, renter,
Or a
or,
realtor,
but
renter,
is a member at large. It's
right, yeah.
concerned with the community.
One that might be totally objective,
Yeah,
practical, common sense.
yep.
Another Warren Chain.
Yeah, okay. So let the word go forth that we're looking for another member at large. Please volunteer, or you'll be voluntold, okay? If we find a likely candidate. Okay, thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. We appreciate it. Okay. Next, I was going to turf it to the public. Elaine, your hand is up. Gloria's hand is up. Gloria. And then Elaine.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Gloria Freeman. Is one proposed member of the group a non-resident? I thought we generally appointed non-voters only when no voter was willing or available.
I don't think so.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, go ahead, Jill.
It might be Ms. Burson to clarify her voting status. Otherwise, I think everybody else is a registered voter.
You're not. Okay. All right. Anybody concerned about that? Mr. Shell?
I'm not only not concerned, but I think we've at least preliminarily demonstrated that nobody else is available, at the moment anyway.
Okay. Ms. Davis, any comment?
Ms. Burson has expressed interest in the matter and resides in the town of Chatham, correct? So, there you go.
Mr. DeCastro, you have your hand up?
I think that I have no problem with Ms. Burson serving. I believe she owns a house here. Right? Yes. I think the principle that Ms. Freeman was talking about is applicable to town committees. It may even be in the town committee handbook. I've seen it recently somewhere. But I don't necessarily think this working group needs to be, confined to that. I understand what Gloria's saying, but as has been pointed out, we haven't had a whole lot of self-promoted interest here.
Okay. I think we're good, Gloria. Elaine, your hand's up?
Yes, thank you,
Yep.
Mr. Chair. I just hope that the working group does not lose sight of the impetus behind this entire thing. And that is that we know that there are approximately 1,300 residents in town that are registered with the state as rental properties. And there are probably another 500 to 700 that are not registered. They use a tremendous amount of water. One of the things that has been brought to your attention and the Board of Health is that many of them are advertising 3-bedroom homes for 20 people. And if we are concerned about our water usage and the fact that it spikes in the summer, and we are dealing with that and the impact on the quality of life, our environment, parking, when you have 20 people in a 3-bedroom house with all the commensurate traffic problems and parking problems and impact on abutters, that is what drove the Board of Health to look into this, because people are using space in their homes that are not bedrooms. And I think it's all integrated. And so I would hope we're not just looking at, well, you know, the real estate brokers don't want it, or, you know, we don't want to stop tourism. Oh, no. You know, we have to think about the long-term objectives of the town and what we're going to be in 5 years if this continues. We have 6,000 full-time properties. That means close to 1/3 of them are rented out on a seasonal basis, on a short-term basis. That is significant. And that's a lot of water usage. So those are my only comments. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Elaine. Mr. Holgren's here, and he has his hand up. Gave us a nice spreadsheet last meeting.
Yes, John Holgren, South Chatham. Yes, I hope maybe you guys had a chance to look at that spreadsheet and so on. And I think what it showed was, yeah, there are some really exceptional people, you know, things are way over the limit. But even of the basically, I don't have the sheet with me tonight, but even of the ones that I found in that little quick survey, the majority of them were just sort of slightly over the limit in terms of capacity. They weren't, you know, it wasn't like that everybody was really trying to pack in as many people. Yeah, there were some really high exceptions, but generally it wasn't. So my other concern was, and part of the reason I was thinking about, you know, this is a type of thing, even though it wouldn't directly affect me, I was sort of interested in being able to participate, at least give some input from my point of view, having been doing this sort of type of business. But I wasn't sure if I'd be able to, you know, because logistically would I be able to like attend or whatever. So I wanted to at least make sure that those type of meetings were something that could be participated in by people like myself, you know, remotely and so on, to be able to get input. And yeah, I think, you know, that there are a large number of people who are non-residents who have rental properties who are going to be negative, you know, directly affected by this. And if we can get, even though they can't vote on these regulations, you know, having them to sort of buy into it and be, you know, happy with it, I think is going to make it maybe work better, because, you know, that's just a little bit from my point of view on this. So thanks.
Thank you. I think it's important to have them hybrid so people can weigh in. Okay. All right, so we have clear direction. Thank you very much. Useful. And we'll go on to our next item of business. I don't see any hands still up. We have a Bikeways appointment. I'll entertain a motion for a Bikeways Committee vacancy to June 30th, 2024. Mr. Nicastro.
I was pointing to Mr. Shell.
Oh, Mr. Shell, I'm sorry. He's the bike. Yeah.
It's his committee, so.
Yes, it is, yeah.
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint David Yates to the Bikeways Committee until June 30, 2024, unless sooner revoked or a successor is appointed.
Okay, let's take a roll call here. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nicastro?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. On to the release of executive session minutes, all relating to litigation. Citizens for Safe Chatham Harbor versus Town of Chatham, bunch of dates. Litigation Skydive Cape Cod versus Town of Chatham, a bunch of dates. Litigation Skydive Cape Cod, Inc. versus Town of Chatham, fewer dates. Many dates. There's a confidential version, a redacted version. What we're voting on this evening is the release of the redacted version. I just wanted that to be real crystal clear there. And I'll turf it over to Mr. Nacastro, who has his hand up. Mr. Nacastro. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to offer a motion. I went through the minutes. I don't have any issues with them. Some of them go back pretty far, and I remember some of these meetings all too well, and some I don't remember as much. And there are some that predated my presence on the select board. And some of the participants are no longer with us, sadly. But I'm going to move to approve both the unredacted and the redacted sets of versions of these minutes, as indicated under all three subparagraphs, and I'll read them. They've been redacted for attorney-client privilege, and also in my motion is to release the redacted versions to the public. So these are the minutes we're talking about. Category 1 litigation, Citizens for a Safe Chatham Airport et al. Versus the Town of Chatham. December 15th, 2015, March 29, 2016, April 12th, 2016, November 14th, 2016, March 21, 2017, May 23rd, 2017, December 12th, 2017, December 26, 2017, January 8th, 2018, February 5th, 2018, April 2nd, 2018, August 26, 2019. Then under the category litigation, Skydive Cape Cod, Inc. versus the Town of Chatham et al., the following minutes: October 14th, 2014, May 6th, 2015, June 23rd, 2015, June 30th, 2015, May 23rd, 2017, September 12th, 2017, October 17th, 2017, December 12th, 2017, December 26th, 2017, January 8th, 2018, February 5th, 2018, August 26th, 2019, September 21st, 2021. And the final category, litigation, Skydive Cape Cod, Inc. versus the Town of Chatham, Federal Aviation Administration, Part 13 Administrative Complaint, June 26, 2017. That's the motion.
And a second.
Second.
Any comments? I just want to thank Sean and Jill and anybody else that had a hand in putting these together. It's an awful lot of work. We're going to try to stay on top of them going forward, and release executive session minutes, perhaps more timely, because some of these do go way back. But this is a lot of work here, by the way. Anyway, Mr. Shell, yes.
Yeah, I want to take the opportunity to mention it's not an issue really, it's a little fillip that I understand that the practice generally here on our boards and commissions is to abstain when you were not present at the meeting. I believe, and I've had it actually confirmed in a session that I attended on, generally on being a select board member and all of the protocols that one is supposed to observe, that a select board member can and should vote, if they so choose, on minutes, notwithstanding it not having been present. I, like Mr. Castro, read these carefully. I thought they were an excellent record. The history was interesting and good for me. And I just wanted to explain that the background, the reason for my deciding to vote on the approval of these minutes.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, so let's take a vote. Mr. Metters?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Chair says aye as well, and I thank you very much. That is it for this evening's agenda. A motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
Let's see, Mr. Nacastro?
Aye.
Ms. Davis?
Aye.
Mr. Shell?
Aye.
Mr. Metters?
Aye.
And the chair says aye as well. Good night, Chatham. Thank you.